Well, good morning, DamFam, and hello, kids and cubs. It is Tuesday, June 16th, 2026, and on today's Daily Beaver Morning Show, we are going to be looking at a series of decisions that have left us rather unimpressed, from looking at the right to water for Indigenous people, to how we are treating our veterans, to U.S. trade, and a whole bunch of other things. So grab your favorite bevy, because here we go.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode number 931, I believe it is, of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian, and of course, always beaverific. Today, recording day is Tuesday, June 16th, 2026. And well, actually, you can't tell from my face, actually, because the sunlight's a little higher up right now. It's a beautiful day here at the Beaver Lodge. First one in a few days, because it's been a little rainy and gray. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, and with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvin Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. And although Mr. Grizzly is not here today, he will be with us Saturday when we do our pubcast. We're finally going to get one in. And it coincides this year, of course, with the mental health walk that we will be doing on June 20th. So if you would like to join us, and if you are in Ottawa, please join us at the Museum of Nature around noon. We're going to take a little 5K walk downtown in front of Parliament, and then down the canal before we stop at the Lieutenant's Pump for our pubcast, which again, you are free to join us to be a bit of a live audience. And if you'd even like to chat with us, that would be great, because remember, there are two rules on our pubcast: no religion, no politics. It's our chance to show that we are a little more well-rounded than just the political stuff, and that there's more to life to it. So we would love to see you there. And of course, for those of you who would like to support our sponsored organizations, the Men of the North program, which is Indigenous led, perfectly appropriate for this month, of course, which of course is also Men's Mental Health Month, but also National Indigenous History Month. And we have National Indigenous Day coming up on the 21st, the day of the solstice. So that will be very, very important. So we have them as a sponsor organization. And of course, the Lonely Man Project in St. John's, Newfoundland, that is looking to build a resource center. So hopefully we'll be able to send them a few dollars. And as you know, I'm trying to get back into shape, trying to lose a little weight. And for every pound I lose between April 12th and June 20th, if you'd like to make a pledge of a dollar or two or more if you're capable, that is the money that we will use to donate. So, kids and cubs, you still have a couple of days to send your pledge request to truenortheagerbeaver at gmail.com if you would like to participate in that. And thank you to those who already have. Hopefully, well, it won't be a huge sum, but every nickel counts, just like it is for the support for the show. These organizations as well, every nickel counts. So if we can do a little good along the way while I'm getting back in shape, that's a win-win. Unlike certain people in politics, I love twofers. So there you go. Uh, a big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and psychictarot.ca. And how is your mental health today, kids and cubs? As you can tell, I'm doing rather well. I had well, two things happened. One, I am a little late today because finally, for the first night after 8 nights of insomnia, I got a good night's sleep. I woke up on my own at 7:30 rather than like at something like 4 or 5. That was very, very good and very needed. So I'm very happy. Hopefully that continues again tonight. I did, however, um, uh, yesterday make the choice to sleep in the guest room. I actually willingly gave up my cherished cuddles to hopefully have a night without snoring, and that actually was rather beneficial. So it was actually my beaver sweetie who insisted on it. He said, "You need some sleep." Um, I listened. I decided to be kind to and gentle with myself, and I got the sleep that I needed. So I'm feeling remarkably refreshed. It's amazing how just one night of good sleep can turn things around. And last night, it was date night. It was date night. My beaver sweetie brought me to this wonderful concert by a group called Schmaltz and Pepper. Schmaltz and Pepper here and we're in effect. Want you to push it, yeah? Which is a very interesting band that does klezmer music, which is uh, associated with Jewish culture, and they describe themselves as sort of like a Yiddish swing band that has a little jazz and mixes some classical. And if it sounds a little strange, it does sound strange at first, but oh my God, what an amazing concert! Blends of style, blends of music. Uh, Virtuosos. I think the clarinetist in the band is actually the lead clarinetist for the Toronto Orchestra. I think the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, if I'm not mistaken. So virtuoso musicians that can blend styles, not only from song to song, but even within songs. There were times where they had something called the Ode to Oi, which was a sort of a medley of Beethoven songs that were jazzy and classical, along with you can hear the tones of Kesmer underneath that, and like sometimes going from style to style within the song, sometimes even within the same musical phrasing. Um, they are just amazing. I got to talk to one of them after the show, and perhaps who also has a side project with another of the band members, which is a little more tango music. And perhaps, if we are lucky, we might actually get her on the show. And I might be able to, at that point, actually play you some of their music. But I know that later on this summer, they are going to be in Ottawa, I think, for the Music and Beyond Festival. So if you are in Ottawa and you like this type of these types of chamber ensembles that are much more innovative, um, You will probably really, really like this. I think that like the first 3 songs, I was looking at them and I was just like smiling because this kind of stuff was right up my alley. I like fusion and I really, really love jazz. I was raised on it. So just, when somebody said Yiddish jazz, I'm sitting there, yeah, I think I'm in. so, yeah, if you have an opportunity, I highly, 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 highly recommend. And hopefully we can get her first name is Rebecca on the show and we can learn a bit more from them about their music. They've only been together for about 2 years, but oh my God, they are very, very good. So there you go. They called Schmaltz and Pepper, and they are Canadian as well. So a little bit of Canadians who make us proud really early on in the show. Um, since we're doing things a little differently, I'm going to put this up right now because I normally do this at the end of the show, but I know some people arrive early and don't necessarily stay to the end. If you like our show and would like to help us in what we do, please scan that QR code. That will bring you to our emergency hydration fund, our tip page, where you can buy your favorite eager beaver a cup of coffee, or me a cup of hot chocolate, or your favorite Mr. Grizzly a cup of hot coffee if you like what we do and would like to encourage us to do more. So thank you so much for all of your help. Now, let's get into it, kits and cups, because we have a show for you today where we're going to be talking about a few things. Um, Mostly things that have, unfortunately, left us rather unimpressed. I don't think that we're going to have particularly deep dives today into any subject. Sometimes we do one subject and we deep dive into it for about an hour and a half to two. This was just a series of things because I was trying to come up with a theme today, and particularly since we went out last night. I didn't have time to necessarily listen to like 40-minute press conferences and then take out details and go cross-reference stuff and get analysis that I can throw in. Um, but there were just a series of news stories that I was reading, and I was just sitting there and like thinking like I'm underwhelmed by this decision. I'm not impressed by this decision. And sometimes it was accompanied by a really good news story that was somewhat related, um, as in the case, for example, um, with regard to um, deaths from illicit drugs, for example. The numbers, there's an improvement in numbers, but then there was a little something um, that's a story that you could kind of connect to this somehow. That was like, but why would you do that? Which didn't make any sense. And I just noticed that there were like a couple of them that happened. And I thought, well, hey, if I put those together, there actually is a theme and there's a show. So some of these are big news stories. Some of them are smaller news stories, but put together, just a couple of moments of, huh? So I figured we would get into them. I've listed some of them in, I think most of them, in the description a little bit to give myself a guide to follow through. But we'll talk about them, and maybe you share the same impression as I do, and on them. Would love to. I'm going to very much look forward to reading the chat from today's show because I'm really going to be interested in what you guys think, damn fam, of these stories. Also, seeing here in the chat that Kit Elaine has some very, very, very precious family time. And I'm so glad that you have a family visiting and that you are going to have, I hope, what is a wonderful and lovely time. So, all my best wishes to you and all of yours on that. All right. So, wow, you guys are really going in the chat already. Kid Chillian, it's a head scratcher. So, yeah, a bit, a bit. Yeah. Um, so let's get started with the first theme that I kind of have for us, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go to my episode description because I try to have just a smaller amount of themes, but today I think I got a few more. So I just want to make sure that I touch them all, touch upon them all. The first one, since it is National Indigenous History Month, let's get started with that. Um, as I mentioned yesterday, there was a bill that was being considered in Parliament when Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister, and just before he left, that had to do with drinking water and Indigenous communities. And the bill didn't get through all readings and get passage because, well, Justin Trudeau's tenure kind of came to a more abrupt end after Chrystia Freeland pretty much came at him from the front and plunged the knife into him, which, not great for him, but ended up being something that was ultimately good for the party because it seemed like it was sinking. Now, you know, a lot of people keep on saying that the Liberals would have had their one of their worst performances probably since Ignatieff if Justin Trudeau would have stayed on. I'm still not particularly convinced of that because Trump still would have happened and Pierre Poilievre still would have been Pierre Poilievre as it relates to Trump, and Justin Trudeau certainly would not have been. Uh, a lot of people tend to forget because, they wanted to see him gone. But I'm still old enough to remember when Donald Trump was doing that weird handshake thing where he was pulling people towards him and all that kind of stuff. And Justin Trudeau went and had that initial meeting with him and did that thing where he put his hand on his arm to prevent that sort of move to counteract that beforehand. And everybody was like, "Oh my God," and the people would have believed, no matter how much they didn't like Justin Trudeau or were maybe a little tired of him, in a comparison side by side between Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre, would have definitely believed that Justin Trudeau was much more yay yay Canada than Pierre Poilievre ever was at that point. So in contrast to Donald Trump, there was potentially a path for Justin Trudeau, probably not to win a majority, of course, but maybe not to get as decimated as everybody was thinking he would be when push came to shove. Um, that's what Justin Trudeau was at least relying on when he was thinking that he would stay. But eventually, the party decided we do not want to take that chance, that gamble. And obviously, he left, and we got Mark Carney, and now we have the situation that we have today, which means no conservative government, for which about at least a solid 65% of us, maybe even 70% of us as Canadian voting population are extremely grateful because um, there's a certain number of us that believe that if Pierre Poilievre had been prime minister, we might already be the 51st state, given that Pierre Poilievre claims to believe that he had a way to get a tariff-free deal with the United States by now. And again, I'm old enough to remember that since Donald Trump returned to the presidency, that the only tariff-free deal that has ever been on offer was agreeing to being annexed. You do with that information what you will, but I do not think that when Pierre Poilievre says that, either he's not thinking it through, or he is basically telling us that he would have entered those rather than entering those negotiations from a position of strength, as he keeps on claiming that he would have entered those negotiations. Um, how does the saying go? Either chin up, ass out, or belly down. Also, ass up. So, and that was not going to work for the overall overwhelming majority of Canadians, and therefore he didn't win that election. He didn't even win his own seat. But there was a First Nations water bill that was being considered. And in the text of that bill, there was going to be a recognition of Indigenous right to clean water. As you know, with Justin Trudeau, one of his primary focuses when it came to reconciliation was specifically uh, addressing the issue of potable water, clean drinking water on Indigenous reservations. And even though he did not get all the way there, because there were some cases that were very, very tough, um, he did make an incredible amount of progress. Um, More than a lot of people thought that he probably would have been able to accomplish. And um, definitely was the prime minister in Canadian history uh, that made the most concerted attempt and had the most success. According from what I can see here, says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's administration originally pledged to end all long-term boil water advisories on First Nation reserves by 2021, but failed to meet this deadline. As of mid-2026, there are still 37 boil water advisories in place across 36 communities, with Indigenous Services Canada actively working to lift the remaining restrictions. Um, I guess how many restrictions there were uh, at the start kind of matters if you want to look at that progress. And at the start, um, there were a total of 133 boil water advisories affecting 93 different Indigenous communities. So, mm, it is very, very significant progress, even though he was not able to get all the way there. And when you think about it, also, there were in certain communities where a boil advisory was lifted, and then something happened, and they needed to put one back on, and then they were lifted again. So in total, 156 advisories had been lifted. So 133 net, but there were 23 cases where things had to be done more than once, and in order to get to that number. Um, so, um, according to so even though Justin Trudeau referenced 133 boil water advisories, though, however, when we're tracking the progress, Indigenous Services Canada uses a November 2015 baseline of 105 long-term advisories. So in this case, it would have been 51 of them that at some point had a failure and that they had to come back to fix them in order to get to the 156. It just depends which metric you're using. The number that Justin Trudeau referred to during the 2015 campaign, which was 133, or the moment from which Indigenous Service Canada started tracking the attempt to reduce them, which was 105. So I gave you both numbers here when I was mentioning this. Um, the Trudeau government had introduced Bill C-61 to address this ongoing issue, and in 2026, the government introduced revised legislation to govern safe drinking water on nations' lands, which is what we're talking about right now, this revised bill, because the Bill C-61 had died on the order paper, as I mentioned, when uh, you know eventually we had to go into a new election. Um, and I think, when Justin Trudeau had prorogued Parliament, of course, um, when he left in order for the Liberal leadership race to take place. So, one thing that was very, very important for Indigenous communities is for there to be a right to water being enshrined in this legislation. And that wording was in the bill that was in Bill C-61. And it appears that Mandy Golmasti, I believe, who is the Minister of Indigenous Services, and who is First Nations herself, um, has been working on this for some time. There has been some criticism about how long it's been taking to get to this particular point. Um, but it seems that the bill has been introduced in Parliament before we go away for the summer break. Hopefully, there will be more consultation on it during this time because there's already some critique that there was not enough consultation in the drafting of this bill. I do not know why this government keeps on insisting on proceeding in this way because they have been let known. It has been told to them several times that Indigenous communities would prefer being involved in these bills at the time they are being drafted and not once a first draft is already put out there for them to perhaps be asked to consult upon. But this government seems to really not want to bring them in on the ground floor, which is a head scratcher because it would just be so simple to do this, right? Nothing about us without us, or the JIPA principle, the greater involvement of the people most affected, just bring them in from the beginning to craft that first draft. That doesn't seem to be happening yet. Our government still doesn't seem to be getting that message. But according to the Canadian press, it says here a new First Nations Clean Water Bill set to be introduced by Prime Minister Mark Carney's government removes a provision in a previous bill that would have recognized First Nations have a human right to clean drinking water. Why? Why do this? I am unimpressed. Why go out of the way to do this? The Canadian press has obtained a draft of the bill labeled, quote, for consultation until June 11, 2026. It's not clear if any changes were made since the consultation period ended. The legislation is expected to be introduced in the House of Commons on Monday, which was yesterday, just days before MPs rise for a planned summer break. That means it's not likely to be debated and passed into law before the fall. A previous bill known as C-61 was introduced in 2023 under the government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau by then Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu. That legislation, drafted in response to a lawsuit against the government that was settled in 2021, went beyond the terms of the lawsuit settlement. It included an option for source water protection and recognition that First Nations have a human right to clean drinking water. The legislation was opposed by the provinces of Alberta and Ontario, of course, which warned that it would undermine resource development, which led us to claim at the time, if you had been watching the show, that if you cannot develop resources without poisoning or threatening drinking water, then perhaps this is not the type of resource development that you would like to be engaged in. In Alberta, we have Mr. Corblund with his petition, right? Water over coal for this specific issue. This is not specifically an Indigenous or First Nations issue. So I think it's pretty much common consensus throughout Canada that please don't pollute our drinking water, especially for a buck. We kind of need that. Um, Says here that bill was drafted with input from First Nations and nearly became law after weeks of study and debate, but it died when Parliament was prorogued last year. In January of last year, months before the last federal election, Hajdu said that she hoped whoever's in government next time picks this up and called the bill, quote, incredibly thoughtful legislation that was co-drafted with First Nations people. Indigenous Services Minister Mandy Golmasti vowed last summer a new bill to replace C-61 would affirm First Nations' human right to clean drinking water. I do not know why a new bill was needed. I mean, maybe it would need a new number in the new session of Parliament, but they could have just used the same text. The work had been done. Some First Nations leaders said they have not been consulted on the new legislation. Both bills share the goal of ensuring First Nations have reliable access to safe drinking water and wastewater treatment, but the new draft legislation blurs the language in the old bill that affirmed access to clean drinking water as a human right. Why would anybody do that? Quote, it is declared to be the policy of the Government of Canada to further the progressive realization for individuals on First Nation lands of the human right to safe drinking water as protected by the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the new draft bill says. The previous legislation, C61, said that it is recognized and affirmed that it is a human right of every individual on First Nations land to have access to clean and safe drinking water in accordance with this act. So when I'm reading these two different wordings, the blurring here is that it is declared to be the policy of the Government of Canada to further the progressive realization of the human right to safe drinking water. So the right is recognized in both, except C61, the older version, says that it is recognized and affirmed that it is a human right. And here it says that what is being recognized and affirmed is that it is the policy of the government to progressively over time realize, get things to the point where, or the right to uh, clean and safe drinking water would be respected. Um, if I'm being generous, I can see on one side that, okay, this is a more um, process focused type wording, saying that, we believe in that right, but we cannot uh, affirm it at the moment because we're not that yet there. And since we're not there yet, as soon as this becomes law, we are going to be in violation of it because right has not been assured and guaranteed yet. So therefore, we affirm that it is our policy to progressively realize that right, to progressively make that happen over time. How long? We don't know. Are there any timelines in the law? These are the next follow-up questions as I'm reading this. Are there any timelines in the law that regulate how quickly we should get there? Or is it just saying, it's our policy that we're going to get there eventually because it is right? That way, um, the government could only be in violation of the law if they were not doing things to progressively realize getting to the fact, to the point where that right is indeed respected, rather than the government being in violation of the law because the right has not, because we have not yet done the things. Right. So it's almost, if we affirm that there's a right, but we're not there yet, right? We're breaking the law. But on the other hand, if we say that there is a right and we're recognizing it and we are working to get there, this is our policy, um, right? It just creates different bases if there's going to be some lawsuits. Um, uh, Again, not sure why it's specifically needed here. It says Indigenous Services Canada reports that there are 37 boil water advisories in place in 36 communities, most of them in Ontario. Trudeau vowed to end all boil water advisories by 2021, but did not succeed. This is by Alessia Passafume of Canadian Press. There's an article from Global, and that's all this one says. It's a pretty thin article here. There is one from Global that also might add something to it. Nope, actually, this is the same thing, actually. It's a Canadian Press article by Alyssa Passafume that was just reproduced in Global as well as with CTV. Um, I'm not. See, this is what I mean. This is really, really thin. And I guess unless we see the draft legislation, and I have not had a chance to go look at it yet, um, because it was tabled yesterday. Uh, like I said, the version that was talked about in the story was the one for consultation. The one that was actually tabled on Monday is not the one that is quoted in this story. So maybe there were changes at that point, but Yeah, it's kind of interesting here. According to APTN National News, it says here, um, several First Nations organizations say they're gearing up for the federal government to table legislation to deal with water issues. Since being elected in April 2025, the Liberals under Prime Minister Mark Carney have promised to reintroduce legislation, first in the fall of 2025 and then in the spring of 2026, to protect water rights. According to sources who asked not to be named because they're not authorized to speak to the media, plans are being made to respond to the proposed legislation, expected on Tuesday, June 16, 3 days before the House of Commons is set to adjourn for the summer. The legislation will replace what was known as Bill C-61, which was introduced under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. C-61 made it to the committee stage in the House of Commons before Trudeau prorogued Parliament on January 6, 2025, and stepped down as Liberal leader. All proposed legislation in the House of Commons and the Senate ended. When elected, Carney promised to put forward a new law in the fall of 2025, but nothing materialized. According to department officials testifying at parliamentary committee, quote, Bill C-61 would establish minimum standards for water services on First Nations lands based on First Nation choice. It would so affirm the inherent right of First Nations to self-government with respect to water, supporting First Nations authority, management, maintenance, and protection of their water. APTN News has not seen the proposed legislation, and Indigenous Services Canada did not respond to questions. But Indigenous Services Canada Minister Mandy Golmasti said at a recent House of Commons Indigenous Affairs Committee that legislation is coming. Quote, the Prime Minister made that commitment to introduce legislation this session. I intend to uphold that commitment, Golmasti told the committee. The summer solstice that hasn't arrived yet, we're still in spring. This is what we intend to do. That was the commitment that was made. In July 2025, Alberta and Ontario wrote to the federal environment minister asking the government to, quote, refrain from reintroducing the legislation. Quote, Prime Minister Mark Carney has made a commitment to do things differently, wrote Ministers Rebecca Schultz from Alberta and Todd McCarthy from Ontario. Quote, we are hopeful that this new federal government will move away from policies and legislation that undermines competitiveness, delay project development, and disproportionately harms specific provinces and territories without any quantifiable benefits to the national environment. Well, really, without any quantifiable benefits to the natural environment. I noticed that in your comment, however, there's absolutely no regard for First Nations. And that's what got our backs up when we brought news of these two environment ministers from the provinces of Alberta and Ontario writing to the federal government and saying, you know, the Indigenous people, they don't really need that clean water. It's getting in the way of us making money. Again, unimpressed face. Legislation dealing with First Nations water was part of a settlement agreement in a class action lawsuit against the federal government. In December 2021, the courts approved the deal between three First Nations in Ontario and Canada. The $8 billion settlement included money for affected communities, creation of a First Nations advisory committee on safe drinking water, support for communities to develop their own safe drinking water bylaws, and a, quote, renewed commitment to Canada's action plan for the lifting of all long-term drinking water advisories. Again, I would like to bring it to your attention that because we did not do the thing that we should have done from the get go, ensure that every single citizen in Canada has access to safe and clean drinking water, it cost us $8 billion plus all bunch of legal fees. Thus, again, confirming what I keep on saying, that it always costs less money in the long run to do the right thing the right way the first time. These types of $8 billion settlements for us not doing what we should have been doing and what we know we should have been doing, if we're being really honest the whole time, these are the types of settlement that drives Pierre Polyev to go to a microphone and camera and say, we're not getting any value for that money. You're not supposed to. I repeat, the value for money that we are supposed to get when we screw up and are forced to pay a settlement is learning that we should not be screwing people over and doing it right. That's the benefit that we're supposed to get. But for some reason, we don't seem to learn it. The agreement also included the need for the government to repeal legislation from 2013 and introduce a new law giving First Nations authority and rights to safe drinking water. When that didn't happen, plaintiffs in the case made a motion asking the courts to enforce Canada's promise. They agreed to pause further action when the government promised to act. Now, according to the lawyers, it's a wait and see situation. Quote, my colleagues and I will take instructions from our clients once they have an opportunity to consider the bill, wrote Michael Rosenberg in an email to ABTN. Our clients will be watching closely to ensure that the proposed legislation fulfills the government's commitments under their settlement agreement. So that's what we have at the moment for this. Hopefully, this change in wording in the legislation is not indicative of a change in level of commitment to meeting the goal. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that this is the case with this particular government. However, uh, it's timelines. It is about timelines here. And we have to be sure that we are motivated by some type of sense of urgency when we're doing that, that we are not saying that we are going to progressively realize this and then use that as a permission slip to drag our feet. You know, oh, well, we're still getting there. We reduced the boil water advisories by one over the last 2.5 years, for example. So we're still meeting the spirit of the law. But are you really? That's the danger with that type of wording. Is then it becomes a debate on uh, how uh, how in line with the spirit and the intent of the law is the pace at which we are moving. So if this law comes with uh, some timelines by which we're going to make some progress, a schedule to get to that realization, and consequences if that schedule is not met, then it's a bit more of a solid law. But if all it says is this nebulous, uh, you know, this is something that we hope to realize sometime, whenever. Um, that leaves it might be a little too cute by half. It leaves so many opportunities for loopholes, and then just more legislation, not more legislation, more litigation, and we can't have that. We can't have that. We're either committing to this or we're not. When we just need to get it done. Um, yes, I'm seeing here. Kid Bucky here says the onus is on the prime minister to prove why it is they should trust him. I agree. Agree. Kid Saucy here. This is why there are people on the left and indigenous communities nervous and suspicious of the Carney government. Yep. And that's the thing, right? This is where my concern about just not bringing them in at the ground floor uh, to craft the initial version of the bill. Because listen, there are so many Indigenous communities in Canada that you can't consult with them all logistically to create a first draft, but you can consult with enough of them to create a first draft that at least has some spirit of that consultation involvement, and then put out a first draft to the entirety of the various communities that at least has some very solid Indigenous contribution content in it, right? It's just that goodwill, right? And I think that's sort of like the um, two different cultures approach to doing things where it confronts, where the government of Canada would say, "Well, let us arrange ourselves among ourselves to make an offer, right? And then let's get you to respond to it, and and then we'll go there." Whereas the Indigenous communities seem to keep on saying, you can keep on doing things that way, I guess, if you like, but wouldn't a better way be to just bring us in at the ground floor so that your first draft is better? Yes, it might take a bit more time to come up with that first draft, but it'll probably um, be easier to get through all the subsequent stages, right? And there probably won't always be at least a trial of intent going in to the further consultative processes if we just chose to approach, to engage into these subjects on the ground floor in a different way than we're doing now. Like I said, I can see the case, the argument for both, right? But it just seems to me that given that it's the same critique that seems to be coming up over and over again, could we just not try the other way? For science, and see how that process plays out instead. Kid Jillian here. It feels to me as though Carney needs to factor in the institutional resistance to changing its own mindset vis-a-vis First Nations rights. Indeed. Here, Kit Breens, sometimes I think Prime Minister Mark Carney cuts corners in trying to move quickly that are questionable. Yes, exactly. Um, not every shortcut ends up actually being a shortcut. And sometimes the winding path, even though um, at first seems longer, is actually the shorter way to get there. It's like I kind of think of it like as Google Maps, right? Is that you got the highway that goes through, and then you got the side road that you can take, and the side road is like an extra 30 minutes to your journey. But then somewhere along the 401, you get caught in a big traffic jam, and you're moving at a snail's pace, and turns out that taking the winding road would have actually been faster, right? Even though you had to travel more miles or more kilometers, it would have ended up being faster because you would have traveled at a consistent, yes, slower, but at a consistent pace rather than fast, 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 and then boom, traffic jam for 45 minutes to an hour, right? Just one of those things. Um, so, yeah, like I said, we'll see how this progresses. Hopefully, over the summer, there will be some meaningful consultation on this. And when we get to subsequent readings, particularly when it comes to providing testimony, that whatever is in there will be strengthened. And hopefully, like I said, there will be some timelines and some consequences for not meeting them in that bill to show that this is a serious effort. Because we just need to get this done. Right. The other thing I was wanting to mention today um, is regarding um, uh, AI and online harms and all that kind of stuff, those types of bills, that type of legislation. Um, it would appear uh, that there is uh, something missing from these bills that would be rather important when it comes to ensuring public safety, and this specifically as a result. How would I put? Not necessarily as a result, but considering that we in Canada recently, very very recently, um, experienced something that no community ever should ever should with what happened at Tumbler Ridge. Um, that that this would be very very vigorously addressed, and for some reason it seems not to be. According to Darren Major of CBC, the federal Liberal government has introduced a new piece of legislation, it says, will tighten privacy rules and regulations for companies handling Canadians' data. Bill C-36, dubbed the Protecting Privacy and Consumer Data Act, would give Canadians the right to request that their personal information is deleted, though there would be some exceptions that would allow a company to deny such a request. Quote, our primary purpose here is to give control back to Canadians over their own personal information and to require by law with enforcement that companies treat the information very sensitively, Artificial Intelligence Minister Evan Solomon told reporters Monday on Parliament Hill. This here is a little bit to the side of what it is that I'm going to bring up, but I want to bring you this information as well because there's a whole bunch of bills. There's the Online Harms Bill, there's Protecting Privacy and Consumer Data Act, and then there's the whole AI for All strategy, and then there's a whole bunch of there's we're talking about a lot of these things all at the same time here. Um, Government officials briefing reporters on the legislation said it would cover any company that has, quote, a substantial connection to Canada. The right to request a deletion would include things such as AI-generated deepfakes that use an individual's likeness. Some exceptions that would allow a company to deny a deletion request would include if the data can be anonymized or if there are retention rules in place for things like fraud prevention, the government official said. The bill proposes higher standards for how companies handle children's data, Solomon said. The legislation is also aiming to create more transparency around how a company uses personal information in automated decision making, where a company replaces human judgment with algorithmic judgment. A government official used the example of a decision around mortgage approvals. Under the bill, Canadians would be able to ask what information was specifically used in an automated decision and request a review in cases where, for example, the information may have been out of date. This is the Liberal government's third attempt to update privacy regulations after introducing bills in 2020 and 2023 that did not become law. The latest bill comes after the government introduced separate legislation last week that would also restrict access to social media for kids under the age of 16, crack down on online harmful content, and put in some controls around artificial intelligence chatbots. So that is the bill specifically that we are talking about the thing that I'm unimpressed. But I want to bring you this information about Bill C-36 too as a way to get into this. That bill also proposed to set up a digital safety commission that the government says will be responsible for enforcing the new privacy rules. Government officials said there would be a specific wing of this commission that would cover privacy, and it seems that there's going to be a lead time of up to almost like 18 or 23 months or something like that before that would be fully in effect, which seems a little quite long for a lot of people. The commission would be able to launch investigations, make recommendations, and issue fines up to 25 million or 5% of global revenue, whichever is greater. Here, officials estimate it could take 18 months to set up the new regulator after the Online Harms Bill becomes law. The new commission would be separate from the existing federal privacy commissioner. That office oversees how the federal government handles private information, though it can accept complaints about private companies and launch investigations based on those complaints. But the current privacy commissioner doesn't have much in the way of enforcement powers and is primarily limited to making recommendations to private companies, government officials said. Now, with the other bill, this is from Jessica Wong, and this was posted just a few days ago on the 13th here. It says this is the Safe Social Media Act, which is Bill C-34. And says that key elements of that bill include establishing a new digital safety commission and setting safety criteria and guidelines for social media and AI chatbots. But the element causing the most chatter is the ban on social accounts for kids under 16, with the potential for exemption for services deemed who've put, quote, adequate safeguards in place. Teens shared with CBC News their thoughts about a social media ban while parents expressed guarded optimism moving forward. Here's what they said this week. And there are some these are responses that have been a little condensed here. So just give you a couple examples here. Jenny Perez, who's a parent from Vancouver, says it seems to be a comprehensive bill with a lot of thought put into it, prioritizing children. We are very happy to see the social media age minimum of 16 there because we feel that will help us families, and society to change the norm. Creating a regulatory body is critical because there is no legislation that can work without proper enforcement. We are also even happier to hear that they will implement a social media age minimum even before the Digital Safety Commission is in place. The government is willing to open a door for those that can prove that they have the safeguards for children in place. What does that mean exactly? I would say let's keep that door closed until we are certain that these spaces meet the requirements. Whereas Chloe Kitzio from Kitchener, Ontario, who's a high school student, says, I strongly disagree with the ban just because I see social media as such a pivotal platform. I post a lot about advocacy, causes, and issues that matter to me, and I also use it as an insight to connect with other children who are very like minded. Social media has been really effective in exposing different realities that we don't always see on the news and that we don't always hear about. So, uh, and again, there are different views here. Xavier Carr, Toronto high school student, says kids are always going to find their way onto the internet, and it's only going to cause people to be more sneaky about it. If you're going to limit social media, I think it should be under 16 with restrictions and not entirely banned. Um, I'm going to put this article in the chat if you would like to read more perspectives from Canadians on this subject. Um, with regard to the chat bots, however, um, with what happened in Tumblr Ridge, is that uh, it was revealed that OpenAI had previously banned uh, the shooter, in this case, their ChatGPT account for discussing gun violence, but did not alert the police about it. The families of Tumblr Ridge have filed a lawsuit against OpenAI and CEO Sam Altman. The company has formally apologized to the grieving community, but from what I can tell, did not necessarily take the step of committing to changing its behavior with regard to reporting. Canadian government officials have pressed OpenAI to adopt clearer, swifter criteria for escalating violent threats to law enforcement agencies. Um, Not sure how that was particularly well received. Um, the legal claim uh, is that the tech company failed to alert authorities to chat prompts from the shooter related to violence. The claim was filed in BC Supreme Court sometime in March, early March. And it alleges that the company designed its chat tool, ChatGPT, in such a way that there were risks users, quote, would become psychologically and socially dependent upon it. The lawsuit states that the company had, quote, specific knowledge of the shooter's long range planning of a mass casualty event, but took no steps to act upon this knowledge. CBC News at the time reached out to OpenAI for a response to the lawsuit. None of the claims had been proven in court, of course. Statement from the lawyers representing the family that filed the lawsuit um, says that this lawsuit seeks to learn the truth of the Tumblr Ridge mass shooting, to impose accountability, and to prevent another mass shooting atrocity in Canada. Um, the claim states that their child suffered catastrophic traumatic brain injury with permanent cognitive and physical disability, as well as other medical concerns as a result of the shooting. Um, and that their younger sister uh, suffered post traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression, and will be impacted physically, emotionally, and mentally for years to come. Uh, The lawsuit alleges that the shooter interacted multiple times with OpenAI chatbot GPT in the time leading up to the shooting. It claims that based on prompts sent to ChatGPT, the company knew or ought to have known the shooter was using the program to plan a mass casualty event, as the chatbot took on the role of counselor, a quote, counselor, pseudo therapist, trusted confidant, friend, and ally. It also notes that while the shooter's account was shut down internally, law enforcement was not flagged of the potential danger. It further alleges the product was, quote, intentionally designed to foster psychological dependency between the user and ChatGPT, as it was calibrated to convey human-like empathy, heightened sycophancy to mirror and affirm users' emotions in a way that had it, quote, assuming the role of mental health counselor and or therapist. The claim also states that the shooter was under 18 when they began using ChatGPT. It alleges that despite the company stating that children between 13 and 18 need to obtain parental consent to open an account, it took no steps to implement age verification or consent procedures, as it focused on engagement over safety. The plaintiffs are seeking damages and costs incurred as a result of the shooting. One of the counter arguments to this is that when it comes to age verification, how do social media companies ensure that? And given that you would have to probably prove that by providing some type of ID, what obligations do they have to protect that information? How long do they keep it on file? And what are the consequences for it if somebody hacks into their systems and steals that data? So there are concerns on both sides here. There seems to be no particular way to have social media companies uh, be able to actually do an age verification check that doesn't open the door to some type of identity theft. And it seems to be that impasse here that is one of the major stumbling blocks. OpenAI has been facing political blowback ever since it emerged that it had suspended the account of the shooter but did not flag authorities in Canada despite multiple employees raising concerns. And it would seem here then that the shooter just created another account at some point. That there was no link between the two. The company CEO Sam Altman met virtually with BC Premier David Eby and Tumbler Ridge Mayor Daryl Krakoa following a separate meeting with Evan Solomon, the federal minister of artificial intelligence. Following the meeting, Eby told reporters Altman had agreed to apologize to the people of Tumbler Ridge and to work with the provincial government to present recommendations around AI regulation. Solomon said that OpenAI has pledged to work more closely with Canadian authorities and that changes to the company's policy since the shooting mean there is now a lower threshold to notify law enforcement. Meanwhile, a coroner's inquest has been announced to look into the factors that went into the shooting, including the role of AI. No date for that inquest at the time of the writing of this article, which was March 9th, had been decided upon or shared with the public yet. As time has gone by, it would seem that what is being presented does not obligate social media companies to report such things, which seems to be something that a lot of people would very much appreciate and like. A couple of days ago, David Eby was being asked about this, and I have this for you. It's the first few minutes of an interview that he did on Sunday on Rosemary Barton Live, and I would like you to take a listen to it. Because Premier Eby actually is making a really good point and is, as far as I'm concerned, seems to be on the right side of this.
The federal government has unveiled its legislation meant to protect children online. It's called the Safe Social Media Act. We were talking about it a little bit earlier. It would mean a social media ban for those under 16 and eventually a new digital regulator to enforce the law. Earlier, I spoke with BC Premier David Eby about the legislation and what more he would like to see. BC Premier David Eby, nice to see you again.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to you about this because you have talked about it a lot and had very particular expectations around what the federal government would put forward to protect kids online. I want to start not with the ban, but with what the government is planning to do with chatbots, AI chatbots. They are not going to require companies to report interactions to police, whether it's someone expressing ideas of suicide or death. But there is sort of a process where these companies will have to show when they've dealt with things or how they've dealt with things. What do you make of that? Does that go as far as you would like it to?
We have a really straightforward ask from British Columbia, and it's not an abstract ask, and it's not, a theoretical ask. It comes out of the terror and the horror that we saw in Tumbler Ridge and the allegations about OpenAI that followed. Here's a school shooting where families were devastated, children were murdered, and following that event, very serious allegations published in an American national newspaper that OpenAI had a group of people inside the company that knew that this was going to happen, made a strong argument that the company should go to police and report it, and the company chose not to do that. Now, those are really serious allegations. They haven't been proven, but troubling, deeply troubling to us in the province and to the families, and opened up this question of when do these companies report? And what is their level of involvement if a chatbot is involved in a crime like this? They've essentially provided the vehicle by which the murderer, the killer, became more efficient. And so if that is a company's involvement, is there criminal culpability? Is there civil liability? What is the obligation on the company to come forward and report? And what was very clear to us is that the answer was way too uncertain to be accepted. These companies have to have a bright line test imposed on them by the federal government that requires them to bring this information forward, full stop. And someone is using a chatbot to plan a violent crime against others, credibly, the company believes that that is the case, they have to report. Full stop. That should be the law, not a complicated reporting mechanism. And we're going to be pushing the federal government on that. I don't want to say we don't like the bill. We do. There are lots of parts of the bill we like. This is a miss.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the social media ban for Canadians under 16. It's going to take some time to get it all in place, the legislation passed, and then, of course, the regulator to put in place. But did that seem like something that you wanted? Does that go far enough for you on that front?
Yeah, and it's so terrible, but I know that this is the case across the country. We've had horrific cases here as well on these social media apps. We had the case of Carson Cleland, a young boy in Prince George, incredibly talented young man, was going to go far, had an interaction over a period of about 3 hours with an account on Snapchat, no connection to him, using a cloaked connection through a VPN from Nigeria. And Snapchat allowed that connection to take place for that person to contact Carson. And within 3 hours, the damage was done, and Carson ended up taking his own life. And so, these are devastating stories and underline the importance of this work. And I don't believe the social media companies when they say they don't know that this is happening or they couldn't possibly prevent it. And so fully supportive of the proposal that if these companies refuse to put the safeguards in place, they should not have any access to children, full stop. Also, I am, as a parent, I really don't want my kids on social media. But I also understand that they may or their friends may access less safe alternatives if there's no option, because what we've seen in Australia following their ban. Yeah. So it's a complicated area. I think the federal government on that piece has struck the right balance. And we do have to impose obligations on these companies, as well as recognize that there are some positive aspects to these things when they're safe and protected for kids, and we can deal with issues of bullying and predators and other pieces, which I know we can deal with, but the companies have to be forced to deal with.
Just to go back to the AI chatbots for a moment, I think the government was looking for a way to have some regulations, but not interfere with people's privacy. Obviously, I take what you're saying, and everyone wants to avoid tragedy, but do you understand the concerns about getting involved in sort of monitoring and surveying people's actions and their right to privacy?
Well, I guess if the companies weren't already doing it, then maybe we could have that conversation. But they are doing it. Sure. They're using the information you put into the chatbots to train the next generation of chatbots. They're using the information that you put in to prepare the large language models for the next iteration. They're already watching, they're already recording and keeping the information. The allegation is that OpenAI had full awareness of what was going on. They had appropriately flags internally to bring to their attention that this kind of activity was taking place. And so in that environment where the technology exists, allegations are not just that the technology exists, but that it actually flagged the activity and the company was aware, then I think it's appropriate to put the obligation on the company to bring it forward. Why they think that it would be appropriate to have a regime where the flag comes up and then someone unaccountable in a boardroom somewhere whose primary relationship is with shareholders, not with the affected families and victims, why that person should get to make the call instead of the government saying, nope, full stop, you got to let us know. I'm not sure why that argument carries any water with anyone. That's why I think a national standard is required.
There you go. And as far as I'm concerned, unless there's something I'm missing, Premier Eby is 100% correct. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever to soft pedal this. There's no reason. It should just be a national standard, and yes, you have a duty to report. And it shouldn't be that much more complicated. No weird reporting mechanisms, no 5-step things, no just you see something, you say something. I don't understand the reason for which there seems to be some hesitancy to just lay down the law on this one. Just put our foot down and say no. In our country, we actually care about our children. We care about the safety of our citizens, and you know, if you are going to create this product and if you're going to deploy it, and if you deploying this product leads to this potential consequence, then it's up to you to clean that up. And it's up to you to to report things. There's a duty on you. You can't just make the profit and not take on any responsibility whatsoever. So yeah, I believe that Mr. Eby is totally correct on this particular file. Now, yesterday there was also an interview with Evan Solomon on about this on Power and Politics. He had just tabled his legislation a few hours before his appearance, so Catherine Cullen, who was interviewing him, didn't have time, obviously, to go through all of it in fine detail. I found the entirety of the interview extremely unsatisfying on the part of Mr. Solomon. There wasn't, there seemed to be a lack of firmness on certain elements and a lot of, I won't say word salad, but high level talking about the subjects, but not that much that's in depth. And the question of the particular critique that Premier Eby had was essentially put to Mr. Solomon in this interview. And again, you tell me whether or not you think that this is a response that is satisfactory, that answers the question, that lets you know why it is this decision was made to not force the reporting, and whether or not this is a decision that you find satisfies your need, either for personal safety or safety that of those you love, particularly should they be younger. But I mean, it doesn't matter, right? Because everybody can be the subject of this type of violence. In the case of Tumbler Ridge, it was mostly kids. But this can happen anywhere to anyone. So let's see here what Mr. Solomon has to say here.
On that.
Okay, I do want to ask you about one other thing related to your file. A piece of legislation that you mentioned earlier, right, which is the Safe Social Media Act. BC Premier David Eby has called this bill a miss when it comes to addressing AI chatbots because it doesn't require tech companies to report users concerning interactions to police, right? And unfortunately, we all look to the tragic example of Tumbler Ridge where the company didn't flag it. But why not say for these most concerning behaviors, it should go to the level of police? David Eby says he doesn't trust these companies, essentially. I'm paraphrasing here, but what we don't, their concern is to their shareholders. Why shouldn't it go to the authorities who are interested in public safety?
So again, you mentioned Tumbler Ridge. Obviously, the tragedy goes on. There's a legal action that the families are taking. I summoned OpenAI, not only their senior team, but Sam Altman, their CEO and founder, and demanded that they open their safety protocols for assessment to our Canadian AI Safety Institute, which, by the way, we doubled their budget in the AI strategy, and they are currently working on it. But the Safe Social Media Act is one of the first acts in the world that will put regulatory frameworks around these new things called AI chatbots. And they will still be subject, and the companies that create an AI chatbot will still be subject to rigorous duties of responsibilities to protect children, to prevent harm from coming up for children, and to disclose transparency on what they're doing to protect children. So,
but why not make them contact police? What if you are missing an opportunity to save lives here, Minister?
So, as you know, I demanded that OpenAI not only work with the Canadian AI Safety Institute, but one of the questions I had I demanded was, instead of when you escalate a threshold to police, it has to be to local Canadian authorities before they were escalating to U.S. authorities. But how they escalate in their safety protocols, they now have a responsibility to protect children and to make sure that there is transparency and to avoid harms to children. And this is the first and really most robust regulatory regime around including these AI chatbots as one aspect of it.
Okay. We're going to have to leave the conversation there for today. It's a busy day. Thank you for making time for us.
All right. Thoughts on that answer? Because that does not do it for me in any shape or form. Now, listen, there's some good stuff in there, right? The fact that at the time, right, they were forced to open up and to show what it is that was in their model to authorities. That's fine. That they are forced when they report to local authorities and not go through the U.S. All this is absolutely that stuff is good, right? Nobody has anything and anybody against that. These are things that are there, but none of this doesn't respond to the question, why shouldn't it go to the authorities who are interested in public safety? The company's first responsibility clearly is to their shareholders. So why not, when that happens, make them obligated to report that to authorities, and authorities that have a first responsibility to protecting not only children, but the general public? So yeah, demanding that they open up their safety protocols for assessment by the Canadian AI Safety Institute, that's fine. Doubling the budget of that institute so that they can do more work, that's absolutely fine. But that's all beside the duty to report, right? The question was, why not make them contact police? What if you are missing an opportunity to save lives here, Minister? And then he doesn't talk at all about saving lives. And the answer that follows, right? His response to that is, I demanded that they escalate to Canadian authorities rather than the US authorities. When they do, okay, but you don't require them to actually escalate it up to authorities. And then moves to you have to understand this is the first and really most robust regulatory regime, including these AI chatbots. That may be so, but it doesn't go the distance in obligating to report when they see this. Why not? We didn't get an answer. We didn't get an answer to why this is not required. You can have all the stronger regulations and processes and whatnot in order to protect children and all that kind of stuff. What if the person had decided to go shoot up a church instead? It was mostly adults. All of a sudden, because it's not children, these things are no longer required. The goal is public safety. Public safety, all of the public. If somebody is on a chatbot, uh, talking about plans like this, seeking counsel, seeking encouragement, seeking tips on how they could be more effective, those conversations should be reported necessarily by law with penalties if they're not. There should be no opportunity to profit on that type of engagement and interaction. I am not uh, I'm not satisfied with that answer. And the fact that not only am I not satisfied, but the fact that when asked directly about it, and it's his own legislation, and he can't even begin to broach that subject, he's got nothing for us as an answer. I find deeply, 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 deeply concerning. There is no reason for which there should not be a duty to report. There just isn't. Um, there was also a bit of a conversation with New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt, also on Rosemary Barton Live on Sunday, and she had a take on it that I'd like to bring to you. That I found interesting because, of course, speaking as a parent herself who has children that are of the age that would be subject to the the proposed social media ban for kids under 16, were it the case that it would be in force today. Of course, we're looking at that 18-month timeline, which does obviously make things a little bit different here. But let's take a look at what it is that she had to say with regard to that.
Online harm. Last week, New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt wrote a letter to the Prime Minister asking him to implement this social media ban. I spoke to her earlier. Premier Holt, nice to see you again. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Rosemary.
You're one of a handful of premiers who's been advocating for Ottawa to ban social media for kids under age 16. Why was that something you wanted to see, and what did you make of the way the government presented it?
Well, it's something we wanted to see because the harms have become strikingly clear from doctors, from childcare development experts, from parents, and from students themselves. It's researched, it's measurable. The negative impacts of social media on youth mental health and development and well-being is clear. And look, I'm a mom to a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. I see it firsthand at home. Sure. And we have the tools to act. Other countries have shown us that they can act and see progress. And so why wouldn't we? When the research is clear and the tools are in front of us, if we can protect kids from harm, we should be doing everything we can.
It is going to take a while for this to happen. The law has to pass. The enforcement or the regulator won't happen until later. And I wonder why, whether you think that that's going to be too long. And then, you yourself said you're a parent. How much parents should be participating in this rather than just putting it all on government to regulate these social media apps?
Oh, this absolutely includes parents. And I think as we've seen, though, having these conversations, putting it out in the public, making it clear that everyone agrees this is the way we should go. I know how challenging that could be. You know, we had grade 8 prom last night. My kid's the only kid without a phone there. And it is so hard to hold that line when it is the point of connection between her and her friends. But once one person does it and a second person and a third person, it makes it easier for the next parent to say no. And so we all have a role to play and a responsibility in this, but I think we can support parents by making it clear this is a line, the government's going to act. We can do things tomorrow, right? We can go into our schools tomorrow and disable access to social media sites through the internet that exists in the schools. We don't need legislation to do that. We can put the legislation in place, even if the regulator isn't stood up, and then we can move those regulations in, but we start to socialize the behavior that everyone starts to see these as the cigarettes of 2026, 2027, and we make it socially unacceptable as we make it legally unacceptable. And so there's things we can all do. New Brunswick's ready to do our part on social media, on targeted advertising, on addictive algorithms to keep our kids safe.
So will you do something while you're waiting for this to go into place? Is there something that you're going to move on?
Yeah, look, we're looking at that because, to be honest, we were in a way surprised to see the government move as quickly as they did. We had thought this was coming, but maybe it was coming later, and we're really pleased to see the action this week. On the other hand, we hear the timelines of 18 months, maybe 24 months, and I do think there's things we can do more quickly than that. So that's what New Brunswick is doing now. We're evaluating what the federal government has committed to, what their targets are. We're looking at the tools available to us that would be complementary and supportive, and then we're going to move forward in ways that are focused on kids, parents, and teachers, and the doctors and pediatricians that are telling us this is necessary. Anything we can do will help reduce the cases of anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, and risks that youth are experiencing today in this online environment.
So there you go. Just wanted to bring you some views of Premier Holt here on this subject. When she's talking about her kids here, of course, this is sort of tangentially linked, but I saw something from a content creator this morning that actually put gave me a chill, and it has to do not with children's behavior online that puts them at risk, but parents' behavior online that puts children at risk. And I thought it was particularly effective. I don't know if there will be some type of. I hope that there's no issue with us showing this because it is someone else's content. But I think it's really important and that you should see it because it's 54 seconds that really hit hard, hit really, really hard, and made me think. And perhaps it puts a frame on it that we might not have considered before or don't necessarily consider at first. And maybe we should. So here it is. It's from an account that goes by the name of Calmacris here. So I will. There you go.
Okay, sweetie, do that little dance again. Okay. Post. Oh, people are gonna love that. I could watch this all day. Who are you? Oh, Todd_1975. What are you doing here? You just made another post of my favorite little girl. She's almost 6 now, huh? Yeah. She's looking so good. Who are you? I follow little Sally here. I just can't get enough of her. Oh, gosh, I wish I could just steal her. You guys go to that ice cream shop pretty often, right? Yeah. Those are my favorite posts. What are you doing? Don't take pictures of her. You posted it. I can screenshot and save whatever I want and do whatever I want with it. That's the ugliest little kid I've ever seen. Hey, Don't say that about her. She's just a little girl. I can say whatever I want. You posted it. But
Mom, why do these strangers know who I am?
okay,
Yeah. That kind of hit when I saw that this morning. Was in my yeah. Uh, y- we we live by being so much of us being online. We leave a lot of information out there that people who think in ways that a lot of us just don't, because we would never imagine doing these types of things. Um, uh, we sometimes volunteer a little too much. We sometimes volunteer just a little too much. So, like I said, it's new technology, and yes, and there is a value to it, absolutely. But there's a reason nowadays where, you know, uh, you need to have some type of code word, right? When people are calling you and claiming that they're in danger or that they need money. Right? I do this show X number of times a day. It's easy for someone to lift my voice. And if they were able to get the number of someone I care about, uh, use my voice and say, "Hey, I'm in danger. I'm in trouble. Could you please come and pick me up, or can you please come and send me some money?" Nowadays, we need to ask, "Sure, I'd be happy to. What's our secret word?" We need to do that now. We need to do that now, as deep fakes are going to become more and more convincing. You know, the in the AI bill, the proposal that there are watermarks on AI generated content, so that we know. That's great, but again, as with all laws, there are going to just because we have a law doesn't mean that people are going to respect it. And I'm going to guess that that has to do. Um, Obviously, with content produced in Canada, might have to do with content if you want to broadcast in Canada. But again, it's the internet. Anything can go anywhere and come from anywhere. Like, how do you really enforce that? Right? And it's like the same thing with the gun laws, right? You're coming after law-abiding gun owners. You're coming after law-abiding content creators. It's not the law-abiding gun owners or content creators we're worried about. It's the ones that are not, or it's the ones that are, who are, until they are not, for whatever reason. That's what we worry about. That's what we're concerned about. And it's not coming after law abiding gun owners or law abiding content creators just for shits and giggles. It is finding it necessary to have to put some types of guidelines and restrictions because there's always got to be one dumbass who's going to break the rules in such a way that ruins it for everybody else. And unfortunately, we need to regulate for that common denominator. That's who the regulations are for. Right? Which kind of, you know, brings me to one subject that I talked about yesterday also, right? When it comes to the online hate bill, where we had the conservatives uh, intending to introduce a motion that uh, simply asks for the government to uh, just cancel and kill its legislation on that. Yeah, yeah. We are law and order conservatives, and yes, you have this online harms bill, but or these hate crimes bill. But yeah, you just need to pull that away because heaven forbid that law and order conservatives allegedly would support a bill. Or let me put it this way, heaven forbid that allegedly law and order conservatives would still be law and order conservatives, still believe in law and order, if it meant not being able to produce rage bait content for the social media platforms it and its influencers live on and make money from. I am not impressed. There's probably going to be a vote on this conservative motion, and then the conservatives are going to run to the media and say, Mark Carney wants to censor all of the internet. We have a political party that is actually fighting for the right to promote hate online because free speech, to commit hate crimes online because free speech, or because they have deeply held personal religious beliefs, faith-based beliefs. As if my belief that I should not be executed because I'm rainbow is not one that is also deeply held. Right? um, it always comes down to money, isn't it? The particular brand of conservatism that exists today would not exist, makes money off this type of content. We have an example of it. We have this conservative guy here, MP. I believe his name is Dan Williams. Yes, that's his name. Dan Williams is the Minister of Municipal Affairs of Alberta. Dan Williams posted something. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to play what it is that he says, and then I'm going to read the tweet that went along with it. And this is rhetoric that I believe is really dangerous. This is Dan Williams here. I believe is very, very, very dangerous.
Canada's DNA is not destined to be a people that reject nation building. What our forefathers passed down to us is beautiful. Canada is fundamentally not an evil, oppressive, and hateful place, despite what many narratives have said. And Albertans, however they feel in this upcoming question of separation, they know that Canada was built as a good place, a good country that accomplished incredible things. But instead, they've been told a narrative for decades now, keeping flags at half-mast, statues being torn down, Lyrics change for political correctness rather than patriotic pride. Systemic appointments to the Supreme Court, to the Senate, and even Minister of Environment, methodically opposing the West and our interests, trying to strangle the full expression of Alberta within Confederation.
Okay. First of all, sir, the national anthem was not changed for political correctness versus national pride. Our national anthem was changed in order to recognize everyone because we have national pride in everyone, not just our sons. Sir, in all of us. How is all of us politically correct? But this narrative here that he says, quote, Canada is a good place. Our history is something we should be proud of, not ashamed of. We were founded by the most proud and enterprising people on earth. If you say so. After decades of elites telling average Canadians that our country is fundamentally evil, oppressive, and hateful, who does this? Who does this? Which elites have been telling average Canadians that our country is fundamentally evil, oppressive, and hateful, let alone for decades? That is not happening. Quote, it is now time to unapologetically defend our country, our shared history, and Alberta's place within it. Please define our in that sentence, sir. Enough lowering flags, tearing down statues, and hiding our heritage. Instead, we should put out more flags, put up more statues, and embrace our inheritance as what was once the freest nation on earth. We were never the freest nation on earth. Again, who determines that? Just like who determines we were founded by the most proud and enterprising people on earth? These are just empty statements that people are telling themselves to feel good about their ancestors and predecessors. Let me fix some of that statement for you. Canada is a good place. Yes. Not a perfect place, but a good place. Our history is something about which we should be honest about, not hypersensitive. Our ancestors and predecessors did both good and bad things. We should own them, learn from them, and do better where we know now to do better. Nobody tells average Canadians that our country is fundamentally evil, oppressive, and hateful. Taking an honest look inward is neither persecution nor an attack, Mr. Williams. Perhaps you're just too sensitive for both politics and history. And again, sir, if you, as a minister in the Alberta government, do not consider yourself to be one of the elites, who are basically characterizing the people who you fictitiously claim are telling average Canadians, and have been for decades, that Canada is fundamentally evil. If you do not believe yourself that that is not fundamentally evil behavior, that is also oppressive and hateful. You need to look in a mirror, sir. You are what you claim to despise and be fighting against. I am unimpressed with this type of behavior. This is not helpful. Other news. Some good news. kits and cubs. With regard to the opiate crisis, actually, numbers are getting a little bit better. According to Campbell McDonald of CBC News, opiate overdose deaths across Canada dropped by nearly a quarter last year compared to 2024, with health officials hailing the data as a sign that the federal government's drug policy is working. Nationwide, 5,630 opioid overdose deaths were recorded in 2025, 23% fewer than a year before, according to the newly published figures. That decline builds on a 17% decrease in the overdose deaths in 2024. Those declines are real progress, Health Minister Marjorie Michel told a news conference held to highlight the data. Quote, today's data offers cautious optimism, said Chief Public Health Officer Dr. Josh Reimer. It shows that when we act on evidence, we can make a real difference. We can build on this progress and save more lives. Officials attributed the decline to a range of factors, including to changes in the illegal drug supply and broader access and use of naloxone, a medication to reverse the effects of an opioid overdose. But with opiate overdoses still far more common than before the pandemic, much work remains to be done, Reimer said. Quote, while these decreases show we are moving in the right direction, these numbers remain unacceptably high and well above pre-2020 levels. For example, while hospitalizations and emergency department visits for suspected opioid overdoses declined in 2025 by 12 and 5% respectively, emergency medical services responses to suspected overdoses increased by 9%. This may be partly attributable to an increase in fentanyl analogs and the mixing of other drugs such as benzodiazepines in fentanyl supplies, Reimer said, explaining that polysubstance overdoses often require more complex interventions. The impacts of the opiate crisis are also unequally distributed, officials highlighted. 3 provinces, British Columbia, Alberta, and Ontario, recorded 78% of opioid deaths. Indigenous Canadians, meanwhile, represented 10% of opioid deaths while making up only 2.6% of the population, which Minister of Indigenous Services Mandy Golmasti said was, quote, truly a sobering reminder of the inequities that continue to affect Indigenous communities. The federal officials would not be drawn on whether the closures of supervised consumption sites in Ontario and Alberta this year could cause an increase in opioid deaths. Gee, I wonder. Quote, if a province doesn't want to move forward with a safe consumption site, I can't force them, said Michelle. There's no one size fits all because, yes, they save lives, but at the same time, I'm not the one delivering the services. The causes of overdose deaths are too complex to offer simple predictions, Reimer said. I don't know what we'll see in terms of changes in communities that have closed safe consumption sites, he said. In Ontario, specifically, if I remember correctly, I think I have it here. There were back in the month, let me see when that was. Just going to look for a date here on this article. Back in the month of March, I believe it is, there were 6 ex-Toronto mayors, including John Tory, that came out swinging against Doug Ford's defunding of supervised consumption sites. David Crombie, Art Eggleton, Barbara Hall, David Miller, John Sewell, and John Tory said the decision to close sites nearly a year ago caused much harm. This is from Omar Mosley, staff reporter from the Toronto Star. Toronto's former mayors have joined forces to urge the provincial government to reconsider defunding supervised consumption sites. In a letter sent to Premier Doug Ford and Minister of Health Sylvia Jones, former mayors David Crombie, Art Eggleton, Barbara Hall, David Miller, John Sewell, and John Tory said the decision to close supervised consumption sites nearly a year ago has caused, quote, much physical harm and death and have resulted in increased public expenditures without resulting in any positive impacts. Last year, the province ordered the closure of 10 supervised consumption sites across Ontario, including 5 in Toronto, as provincial legislation prohibited them from operating within 200 meters of schools and daycares. One site in Kensington Market remained open due to an injunction granted as part of a court challenge, while another in Parkdale closed in November, with the province citing crime and safety concerns. The government plans to defund the remaining 7 cities in Ontario, including 2 in Toronto. The mayors pointed to numbers compiled by drug policy experts Gillian Cola with Memorial University and Tara Gomez with the University of Toronto. The numbers show EMS calls for opioid-related overdoses rose by 69% across Ontario since the closures in April 2025, 604 calls in the first quarter of 2025 to 1,024 calls in the third quarter, according to data from the Ontario Drug Policy Research Network. Province-wide emergency departments visits for opioid-related toxicities are up 67%, from 608 visits in March 2025 to 1,015 visits in September 2025, according to Public Health Ontario numbers. At immediate availability, Jones emphatically rejected the idea of reconsidering the province's plan to move away from harm reduction services. Quote, "We're not going to reverse it," Jones said. "We've been very clear. Our focus is on the heart hubs to make sure that people have access to treatment." Heart hubs were introduced as part of the government's new model focused on getting people into housing and treatment, but they've been criticized for being slow to take off and removing a service that kept people alive until they're ready to enter treatment. There is no reason to create a gap until such time as that service was available, running effectively, and evaluated as running effectively. NDP leader Merritt Stiles told reporters the heart hubs, quote, "are not up and running, and the ones that are still aren't offering the full slate of services the province promised. Quote, taking away supports and programs without replacing them with anything else comparable is the real problem. And that's what we're seeing across the province," Stiles said, adding that while the province is touting its recovery model, the waiting list to enter rehab in many jurisdictions is months, if not years. And if people are ready to go, you have to get them in now before they change their minds. Because it takes a lot of work to get to the point where you are ready to go. In their letter, the former mayors emphasized the sites must, quote, "be properly run to minimize impact on surrounding neighborhoods and that they're not a means to an end. Quote, "We recognize that sites are not a standalone solution to the overdose crisis or substance use, but they are a critical component of a comprehensive evidence-based system of care," they wrote. "Removing them from Ontario does not improve anyone's health or make anyone safer." But Doug Ford closed them anyway. Now, something that the government is doing uh, doesn't make sense in the context of this. Um, it would appear that the federal government is looking to change its policy as it applies to veterans with regard to coverage for medical marijuana. As you know, some of the people that have been very affected by the opioid crisis are veterans, especially if they are going through things and are opting to self-medicate. And of course, we had that whole era during the Harper mandate where they decided that a smart thing to do was to give veterans at a point where they might be at the most vulnerable a lump sum payment. Fortunately, that's been fixed. And then, of course, they were going to wash their hands of any responsibility for them. And Harper even uh, outright stated something to the effect that the government actually doesn't have a lifelong duty to its veterans, which just blew everybody's minds and probably led to the ABC movement, which was started by veterans. But here it says that the Parliamentary Budget Office today is going to release its assessment of the government's estimate of the potential cost savings of its proposal to reduce the reimbursement rate for medical cannabis for veterans from $8.50 to $6 per gram. Now, unless the cost per gram has decreased by $1.50 or $2.50 since that program came on. Why would you reduce coverage for veterans for an alternative to opioids that is way less damaging and addictive? What could possibly be the reason to make this kind of cut? Again, I am unimpressed. And to save how much, really? I don't get it. I don't get it. Since we're getting close to our time here, I'm going to skip the stuff about U.S. trade. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that on another show that was in the description. And I'm just going to go to, again, something really trivial, but that illustrates a behavior, again, that I find not particularly impressive. As you know, conservatives just cannot seem to stop talking about Justin Trudeau. In fact, Pierre Poilievre the other day uh, claiming, I guess, or thinking that he was going to be ridiculously clever, thinking he had a really good dunk here. Was quoted as saying, "I try not to think about Mr. Trudeau any more than I have to, like most Canadians." According to Le Devoir, since Justin Trudeau's departure, the Conservative Party has mentioned him 688 times in the House of Commons, with Pierre Poilievre personally thinking about him more than anyone. Number of speeches mentioning the former Prime Minister at the 45th Parliament of Canada, dated May 1st. Gérald Deltel of the Conservative Party of Canada mentioned Trudeau 17 times. Kelly McCauley of the Conservative Party of Canada mentioned him 18 times. Kevin Lamoureux of the Liberal Party of Canada mentioned him 26 times. Jasraj Singh Halan of the Conservative Party of Canada, the guy that probably would have been our finance minister had they won, yikes, mentioned him 30 times. Pierre Poilievre, Conservative Party of Canada, mentioned Justin Trudeau 54 times. And that's only the times that he's been mentioned in the House of Commons. Because Pierre can't stop talking about him everywhere else he goes. Cute little cartoon that was shown up here that gave me a good little chuckle. It's Pierre Poilievre on the couch talking to his therapist here, and Pierre Poilievre is sweating and looking around with big eyes going, "Trudeau, Trudeau, Trudeau." And there's a sort of like a image, an illusion, if as Pierre Poilievre would call it, of Trudeau sort of floating in the air. And the therapist is, "And tell me, Pierre, is Justin Trudeau in the room with us now?" Well, Justin Trudeau is not in the room with us now, but he has been over in the press and in the media lately because Justin Trudeau was at a movie premiere with his new girlfriend, Katy Perry, right? Because she has a concert movie from her Lifetimes tour that was debuting. And it seems that this is a sort of first red carpet thing that's confirming really what we all knew very much publicly, that they are indeed an item. Good for them, right? And then again, Katy Perry was performing at the opening match of the World Cup in the United States. And of course, Justin Trudeau was there. And of course, media decide to try to portray that as Justin Trudeau cheering for Team USA or cheering on Team USA, right? He's now unpatriotic. Right? All these people who wanted him to be gone allegedly can't stop talking about him. Now, Mr. Trudeau, because now we can say Mr. Trudeau because he is a private citizen again, decided to address it lightly, right? Stating that, we all do things for love, pretty much, right? But you know who I'm with. Quote, sometimes supportive boyfriend duties call, but you know who I'm rooting for to take the cup. He said, citing a New York Times article that claimed here, on a day that Canada and the United States both opened their campaigns at the World Cup, Justin Trudeau opted to watch Team USA, where his girlfriend Katy Perry was performing in the opening ceremony. Well, yeah, because could you imagine the conversation at home afterwards? Dude, I was performing at the World Cup. It's like one of the biggest stage that there are. It's like, and you decided you weren't there. Anybody can understand being in the stands to support someone you love when they're doing what it is they are best at, when they have such an opportunity as performing at the World Cup, where they would be seen by billions of people around the world. Who wouldn't be there? Who wouldn't make the choice to support their partner? It's a human thing to do. But of course, because politics and some people can't turn it off, right? So, of course, for some reason, CTV Power Play decided that this was a subject that they needed to afford some time to. And I want you to listen to what Lisa Raitt is going to say here, because this here, once again, in my estimation, is one of the reasons for which the Conservatives hit 29% in that Nanos poll. And again, this is them looking to see if they can go lower, clearly.
To Lisa and Tom and Brian and you before.
Whoops. Sorry, this is on a little bit of a too high a speed. So let me just go back a couple of seconds here. There we go.
Team Canada was playing. He said love made him do it. He's just playing a supportive boyfriend. Your thoughts?
It's he, as I said to Lisa and Tom and
Okay, he taunts us. What is taunting about him being with his girlfriend? Again, I don't know.
Nationally, and obviously being there with Katy Perry is the excuse for sure. But I also think he certainly enjoys having that opportunity. So let's move on to more important things, like the things we just discussed.
Yep.
Lisa, do you care? Oh, I can't even. Is your audio's right off?
Oh, I said
That's
I'm so glad that he's not. I'm glad he's not negotiating this trade deal, but I would say as well that I'm looking forward to Katy Perry's breakup song with him.
Come on. Come on. Really? Really? You guys already cost him one relationship. Again, why? Why was that comment? Why was this topic of discussion even necessary? But why was that comment from Lisa Raitt necessary? I'm looking forward to their breakup song. This is the type of behavior that makes people hate you. You don't have to swing at every damn pitch. Until conservatives can figure that out, hopefully that party is not going anywhere. That's just gross. It's just gross. So, like I said, a day of things that have left me just completely unimpressed. I'm not sure if you agree, but that's how those things landed with me yesterday. So, kids and cubs, we are at the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring. Word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about this and all about us. Please include a little bit of yourselves as to why it is our content resonates with you, because that makes people more likely to click on it. And of course, again, because we're fighting the algorithm, please share the content anytime that you can. That's the best way to help us out. If you would like to help us out in other ways, kids and cubs, scan this QR code, especially if you are not watching on our YouTube channel, to go there and click on like, share, and subscribe, because that helps us also with the algorithm while you're there. If you want to, if you're watching on your phone fewer than 7 days after this was broadcast and you want to swipe left on the comment box and give us some hype points, you can do that 3 times a week, and that makes it such that people are able to find us, because it helps amplify the voices of smaller content producers like us. And of course, kits and cubs, if you want to leave us a comment, right down there in the comment section, also a good thing to do, because that also shows some engagement. So all that good stuff, if you would. Thank you so very much. And if you would like to support us by offering us an enthusiastic expression of encouragement in the form of a tip or a contribution to the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund, this QR code will bring you to our coffee page. That's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, where you can make a one-time or recurring donation that you can stop anytime you want. You are not locked in order to show some appreciation for the show, and of course, show some appreciation for the show. Interesting. And help us with the costs that we incur to bring this to you. And we thank you so very much for that. When you contribute through coffee, we get about 95 to 97% of your donation. You can also contribute through YouTube by buying a membership or buying stickers or participating in a super chat. We get about 70% of your donation there. And if you're doing the Buy Canadian thing still, because you do not want to give the US CE Tech Bros any of your money, then you can do a direct bank transfer via our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. It goes from your institution to ours. There are no service fees, and we get 100% of your donation. That email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, is also where you can make another type of contribution if you can't contribute financially, and that is by letting us know what it is you think of our show, good, bad, or ugly. Have some guest recommendations for our interview project, or for example, sending us some of your good news to help us with the doom scrolling, because some days get a little heavy and we love your good news. So please do use our email address. Or if you have some questions about the show or questions about politics that you would like to answer in a future show, please send them to us there. As well, kids and cubs, if you're looking for us at our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge on the Twitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our original home. We have the DamFam Discord run by members of the DamFam to keep the conversation going. We have our Instagram page run by Kit Uncover, and we have our coffee page and our Substack called Beaver Bites. So these are all places that you can go to get some of our content and interact with us. And we thank you so much for everything. We read everything that you post, even though we are not able to absolutely answer to everything. And if you have not seen my appearance yet on the O Show of last week, please do make some time to check out Laura Babcock's page from the O Show, and give it a little like, and even why not subscribe to it as well, because as content creators, especially Canadian based, it's good for us to be supporting each other as well as the show that you prefer, which I am suspecting might be mine, but it's okay if it's not. It's okay if we're one of many. We're not asking for exclusivity. So long as you keep coming back home to us. And here's the link for that episode here, if you want to go check it out. Because democracy is something that you do, we have our petitions. We have our commons.ca petition E7340. which is at 39,489 signatures. And this one asks for the House of Commons to invoke its authority under Section 53 of the Supreme Court Act to refer the 2025 Alberta Justice Statutes Amendment Act to the Supreme Court to determine whether or not it is constitutional, and to direct the Foreign Influence Transparency Commissioner to immediately investigate the meetings between the Alberta Prosperity Project and the Trump administration. So you can find that petition here. Please sign it and share it around. And of course, also Charlie Angus is asking you to particularly write to that Commissioner of Foreign Interference and to ask about that. We gave the address on a previous show. Hopefully, I'll be able to find it before the show ends to give it to you again. But we do have that request from him as well. We also have our commons.ca petition E7395, which now has 11,976 signatures, basically asking for the House of Commons to stop funding Stornoway as a residence for the leader of the official opposition. And finally, we have House of Commons, so ourcommons.ca, petition E7124, the link of which I just posted here in the chat as well. And this petition calls upon the House to formally review the conduct of U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra should the review find that Ambassador Hoekstra's action are inconsistent with diplomatic protocol or detrimental to Canada's interests. The Government of Canada take appropriate diplomatic measures, including the possible request for his recall. Charlie Angus also asked for you to include that in your request to our Commissioner on Foreign Interference so that it could be looked upon. And this one is at 26,514 signatures. So please share those around and do a little democracy today. We would definitely appreciate that. Words of wisdom, kits and cubs. If you have the opportunity at any point soon to support some local artists, we would definitely call upon you to do that. They add to the vibrancy of our communities, and certainly the ones that are more up and coming deserve a little bit of support. So please support them with your presence and your dollar. Could be a tough world out there, kids and cubs. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now, at the count of 3, may I please have all together you saying, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Let me hear it. Ooh, yeah, that is the good stuff right there. And since you asked so pridefully, how can I resist? Your humble queen must serve and slay. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. And kits and cups, since it is National Indigenous History Month, we got some news of some Canadians that make us proud. And this one is from the community. I'm just going to put their image up there. And this is, kits and cubs, Labrador's first Innu nurse, Elder Mary Pia Benuin. And she received quite an honor the other day. According to Elizabeth Witten of CBC News, Memorial University's Labrador campus hosted a historic convocation and recognized the decades of contribution made by Labrador's first Innu nurse. On Friday, the first cohort of nursing in Arctic and Subarctic Futures Master Program graduates graced the stage to accept their degrees. Mary Pia Benuin was also awarded an honorary Doctor of Laws. Benuin told the audience the day is significant since it's marked 36 years exactly since she became a nurse, which also coincided with her late mother's birthday. Quote, "What else can a girl want in her lifetime?" she said behind a podium, prompting laughter. Speaking with CBC Radio's Labrador Morning after the ceremony, Benuin said she was happy to see her years of work be recognized. At the start of her career decades ago, Benuin said it wasn't easy in Shishachyu, but in time, she became a leader in the nursing department as well as in the community. Benuin said the graduation of the first nursing cohort is something she's happy to see, adding she had been invited to talk to the students in their classroom when they were starting their education. Quote, "I came and talked to them and told them that it's going to be hard, but if you keep it up, you'll get there, and I'm so happy to see them here," said Benuin. She said all of their hard work has paid off. To improve the healthcare system in Labrador, she said there needs to be more Innu people working in it and advocating for it. Quote, "It's only the Innu that know what is happening in their community," said Benuin. For Arctic and Subarctic Futures Master Program graduates Chelsea Flowers and Victoria Gatehouse, being able to continue their education in Labrador was meaningful. Quote, "Being able to learn here at home in Labrador, it's been quite the journey. A lot of hard work by a lot of people that would be too many to name right now," said Gatehouse, who called Friday's convocation historic. Flowers said it was deeply meaningful to be able to stay home and learn while also staying connected to the land. It was really, really transformative and heartfelt, said Flowers. And since we're showing some pictures of Canadians who make us proud, let's show a few more. Like right here, this is Victoria Gatehouse on the left and Chelsea Flowers, who have graduated. And just a little further up here, this is Maria Pia Benuin, joined by her entire family as they posed for a picture, along with a portrait of her late parents, Louisa and Matthew, who certainly would have been proud, and dare I suggest, even more proud than we are, of course. So there you go. Congratulations to you. Very well done. It's always a joy here to celebrate Indigenous achievement and success. All right, that's all I have for you. Amoureux bisous, and we will see you tomorrow, kits and cubs. Bye.